Satyabama Institute of Science and Technology.
Hello and welcome to the beginner's tutorial of Photoshop. This is Senthilkumaran, Assistant Professor, Department of Visual Communication, Satyabama Institute of Science and Technology, deemed to be University. In this tutorial, we are going to take a closer look at Workspace panel in Adobe Photoshop. In the last episode, I given an introduction to the Photoshop interface. Where I introduce the panels in this video, I am going to show you how to customize the panel layout to create a more comfortable, tailored workspace for the user. Later, I will also be recommending a workspace that I find really effective. So, here we are where we left off in the previous video. With this document open to begin, I just want to close this document and I won't want anything to distract us here. Okay. So, over here on the right, we have a slim panel that contains panels that are represented by these icons. Also, we have some panels that are already visible to use as stated in the previous video. These panels contain various tools, options and properties regarding object in the canvas area. If we click the icons, we can reveal the panel inside. Panels like the control panel along the top here are essential in order to produce work in Photoshop. In order to have a swift workflow in this program, it will help to have a comfortable setup of these panels. Okay. So, at the moment we are looking at the default setup for the essential panel workspace. Now, if we looking at the top right of our interface just above the control panel, we can see drop down icon. If we press this, we can see a list. Here we have 3D motion, painting, photography and so on. As we start to select these, we will notice the panel layout changing. Now, this is Photoshop attempting to create an ideal workspace for a given task. If you are using Photoshop for just painting, then we click on Painting Photoshop will offer you an ideal panel setup for painting in Photoshop. If you are using Photoshop for just typography, then by clicking on typography, Photoshop will offer you an ideal panel setup for typography in Photoshop and so on. So, I am going to click back on essentials and we are back into the minimal panel setup on the side. So, this time we are going to top right and click on essential. Well, if I click this, watch what happened. Just like earlier, the panels have changed, but this time they have changed to my personal setup, and as you can see, the panels are arranged slightly different to other panel setups. In Photoshop, you can customize your panel setups and save them. These panel setups are called workspace, and should someone else use a different workspace, then you can always come back to your own workspace in future. So, this is my workspace and this is what I find work really well for me. Now, I actually use a lot of tools in Photoshop. So, I have arranged my panels in this way. I have arranged the panels in a column. They are clearly visible at all time and the various panels are arranged in according to their context. I have all my color panels at the top. I have my layers, brush presets and path under this, and I have my characters and paragraph panel at the bottom. So, now I am going to show you how you can create a workspace just like this. So, before we begin, I am going to come back to the top of my workspace setup and click essentials. This is going to put you up back at the default setup. So, what I am going to do is now click on a panel icon to reveal the contents, and then carefully click and hold the panel tab name and drag it out like so. What we just did there was separate the panel. So, I will do this once again. With the second panel, I will click it to put it out and click and drag the tab out like so. Now I will come to visible panel and continue to drag out the tabs on these until I have no panel left on the right, and they are all scattered like so. Now we can see they all exit in their own panels. What I am about to do next is join these panels together in a particular order. So, I am going to start with the swatches panel. So, let us find the color panel, and here it is. Then I am going to click and drag this into the swatches panel like so, and what you are looking for this is the blue line inside the panel, not on the top but inside. On release, you will notice the tab is now placed into the swatches panel, and that is now as Essence one panel group. Great. So, I am going to do this again, but this time I am going to drag the path tab into the layers panel, drag the adjustment tab into the swatches panel, and drag the properties tab into the same panel. If I put my mouse cursor over the bottom right of the panel, I can click and drag out the expand like so, and then simply click the X to close all the other tabs. So, now I am left with just two panels group. So, by click on the top bar of each panel group, I am going to drag these into the middle like. This time I am going to click and hold on the top bar of the layer and path tab, and being to move it around like so, but this time move this just over the bottom of the panel group containing the swatch panels. What I am looking for is a blue line across the bottom. When I see this, I will release. This will then swap that panel group into the bottom, and they are now joined. And if I click and hold the top bar of the top panel group, you can see they are now moved together. So, now I have a neat little panel group. Now, before we attempt to save this panel workspace, we want to add more panels to it, and we are going to use. For example, let us come up to the top main menu and click window, scroll down to characters. What should appear is a panel containing the character panel. Just like earlier, I am going to click on the tabs to drag out and separate them. Just like earlier, I am going to click and drag the paragraph tab into the character tab, then click and drag the top bar to join the bottom of my other panels. Go to Windows, in the topmost file menu, click brushes. Once it reveals brushes and brush settings, make it individual and drag this to the layers panel. Hold it till you can see that blue line. Once you find this blue line, you can release it so that it can be attached to that particular panel. Likewise, you can attach the rest of the tab. Once you get completed, you can find that you can easily swap this interrelated to each others. Now you can see all the tools are being set in a particular one single panel, which you can able to move as an individual panel. By holding this panel, you can move this to your very right of this workspace. You can find a vertical blue line appearing. Once you see that, you can release it so that it will be set in this workspace. To save this workspace, move on to the top file menu, click window. In that, move to workspace, new workspace. I am going to save it as tutorial workspace. We have set this workspace for our usage. Like this you can customize your workspace accordingly to your access and to your requirement. So, in this we have learnt how to set or how to customize our workspace in Photoshop. So, that is all for this tutorial. We will see the next topic in the upcoming tutorials.